Hello, everybody. We've got Mick Prince and Wayne Hartle. We're going to do kind of the policy and procedures workshop in a recorded webinar here. Hopefully next year we're able to have a live event for our policy and procedures workshop. But as of right now, this is it. We are planning a live question and answer session for next week, but we're going to give everybody a week to digest the information on this recorded webinar, formulate some questions, and then get back to us next week during the live webinar. So without any further ado, Wayne, you want to go through this, Doc?
Sure. So we'll start with going through the updates we've made to the operations manual for PY 2022. Before we get into the actual text, I wanted to just mention a couple of things that are going to be different in the version we send to all of you this year. We're going to send it to you in a Word format. So hopefully it'll be easier for you to maneuver to different sections when you're looking at it on your computer. So now we set up the table of contents so that if you want to go to a certain section, you can just do a control and click, and it's supposed to work. Here we go. Now it'll take you right to that section of the manual. Also, you'll be able, with having it in Word, you'll be able to easily be able to click on find, and maybe you want to type in something you want to look for. Let's reweather. Got a dash in there, don't we? Reweatherization. That didn't work either.
You can get a better example.
All right, let's try something else. What else can we look for?
Eligibility. Hey,
There you go.
that search function didn't work very well in the PDF.
Right.
And so we want to make it easier for you guys to find the guidance you're looking for. So we're going to put it out in a Word document. It's going to be blocked for editing, but you can still copy and paste out of it and all the other functions. So
that's the new version of the manual. Now let's go through the updates we've made for this coming year. First, we'll talk about a couple of minor changes we've made to the manual, and we don't want to copy the whole section because it was just a couple minor changes. But we did make some changes to the categorical eligibility. The only categorical eligibility programs are Social Security Title 4 and 16 and LIHEAP eligible customers. In the past, we also had the Housing Trust Fund, TANF, and AABD. The trust fund is no longer in use, and TANF and AABD are not considered categorical under DOE weatherization.
yeah, just a quick comment on that, Wayne, is we do think that in the future in LIHEAP that TANF and AABD and maybe SNAP are going to be categorical for LIHEAP. The only ones that DOE recognizes is LIHEAP eligibility and the two SSI titles there, 4 and 16. And so by proxy, we'll be able to pretty much utilize the categorical eligibility through the LIHEAP program. Yeah.
And the other very minor change we wanted to mention is we just made a change to language in terms of replacement refrigerators. Used to say must be energy efficient. Now we're just saying that replacement refrigerators must be ENERGY STAR rated. Typo.
Real time.
That's right. Okay. On to section 2 on program eligibility and benefits. Made some changes to the income eligibility. As we do every year, we update the eligibility income levels. This year we have some good news and some some annoying news as well, but it's mostly good news. Due to changes at the by HHS, which they allow LIHEAP for clients up to 60% of the state median income, and then some changes to the energy, and that's a state level, and the Energy Assistance Act. The state fund can now be funded at 200% level with HHS and DOE. So at least for households up to through 6. So for households 1 through 6, we'll all have the same eligibility requirements for state HHS and DOE. Only other thing stay is they also have to be from a participating utility. Now, when it gets to households above 6, it gets a little more complicated because of the HHS rules. And oops, put that down. So for units, for households above 6, the state is going to be a little different because given the methodology HHS used, once you got past households of 6, there's a different level for 60% of state median income versus 200%. So I don't want to get into all why it's this way, but we have to follow this. So it's only maybe 1 or 2% of our households are going to be that household size of 7 or more, so it won't affect very many. But then there are these different levels for state and DOE and HHS funds.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we've got a table that kind of explains it.
All right, so here's the graph that kind of explains why it's different after you get past households of 6. So as you can see, the 60% state median income is above 200%. Households below 6, so that's why we can use the 200% for all 3 funding sources. And then the HHS methodology for units above 6 is strange. It flattens out for some reason and gets below a 200% poverty level. So that's why you have to, at larger household size, you have to use different funding levels for state.
Yeah, it even gets below 150 there as you tail off. I don't think we have very many households with 11 or 12 people in them, so we're not going to have to worry about that much.
These are just other little minor changes we made that are related to the changes that we've made because they're all 3 at the same 3 funding sources at the same level now for the most part.
There is going to be a little learning curve there for the intake workers and the people determining eligibility, but ultimately the table above is going to make it pretty easy. So
it's more simplified now. Next issue is reweatherization. Due to the federal reauthorization of weatherization, they changed the rules for reweatherization with DOE funds. It used to be some date, September
30, 1994 was the reweatherization date for about a decade.
They finally changed it to 15 years. So to make things more consistent, we're changing all the funding sources to 15 years. So previously weatherized homes are eligible for reweatherization regardless of funding source when more than 15 program years have passed from the program year of its previous weatherization. And then there's or previously weatherized homes damaged by fire, flood, or act of God. So for an example, a home that was weatherized in PY 2010 will not be eligible for reweatherization again until PY 26. So you got to wait till you get to that 16th program year until it become eligible again.
Yeah. We've had a lot of questions about how we're going to handle people that have applied and have a current application that we were utilizing the 10-year rolling reweatherization. We're going to allow agencies to continue to serve those clients that have an approved app right now with the 10-year rolling. They will need to get buttoned up in this program year or before that app expires. If the app expires and they didn't get completed in PY22, you're going to have to use the new methodology for re-verifying that app. So it's pretty important that those clients get served before their app expires. And real quick, Wayne, before we move on, WeatherWorks has got some coding in there now that's going to have some edits and hard stops on reweatherization. And so if you are working with a client that had the 10-year rolling, you're going to have to contact your tech, and we'll need some IT support to push that job through WeatherWorks.
Here's just a minor change on the section regarding utilizing 3 funding sources. We just added clarification that when you're using HHS or state funds for window or door replacement, it's when normally eligible when it meets the 250 CFM air sealing requirement.
We're not getting into the window and door replacement regardless of funding source.
Just updates to the average cost per unit from DOE. I think it went up about like a little over $100 for this year. So the average cost per unit now is $7,776. Health and safety cost, that was a minor change. I think it only went up at $5 or so.
Good point, though. I don't remember if we've told Chad to make those updates in WeatherWorks, so we'll have to get that updated. I know it's calculating average and whatnot now.
You're right. Okay, under the IWAP mechanical waivers section here, we added some language. Waiver request was also required when an agency is calling to replace a heating system that was replaced in the LIHEAP furnace program within the last 5 years.
Yeah, a little backstory. We've had, with the new braided funding rules, I guess they're not new anymore, but with the braided funding rules, you can replace an 80% furnace, whether or not it has an SIR above 1 or not. Well, we had like some 2-year-old LIHEAP furnaces that people were now trying to replace with a 95% efficient furnace. And so if we are doing that, we're just going to have to justify that through a waiver.
Because in LIHEAP emergency furnace, we're also encouraging them to install 95% furnaces.
Yeah, so
furnaces. So if they couldn't do it then, they need an explanation of how they can do it now.
Right. Makes sense to me.
Okay, we got some updates to the procedures for the Section 106 review. Instead of mailing them in now, the Historic Preservation Agency now, or I guess it's all under Department of Natural Resources now, wants them sent via email. So all documentation should be sent via email to this email address. We've also updated what should be included in the documentation based on what's on their website. And we also have some links here to their website that where you can provide more details on how to submit 106 documents, or just if you want more information on the review process.
It's good to see that they've moved into the 20th century.
All right, we've also, and this is the COVID enhanced safety protocols section. We've kind of made some updates here. Got rid of some sections or a couple of items that no longer apply. And we also clarify here that and simplified it that staff should follow CDC or local health department guidelines for quarantine. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, and also follow CDC or local health department guidelines on the use of masks while doing work in a client's home. And I think we say somewhere else down here, if a client requests, field workers should wear the mask in the home.
Yeah, and, about this, especially over the last couple of weeks, that we're relaxing some of the requirements in the state of Illinois. We feel like there's probably a significant number of our clients that aren't vaccinated, a significant number of workers working in the homes that aren't vaccinated, and really until this thing's over, we have to have some kind of safeguards in place. And so obviously the relaxing the mask requirement is a big deal, but we feel we still need to have a lot of these other safeguards in place for the near future, at least.
Yeah. Not too much longer.
Yeah.
Section 4 on intake, we added a paragraph here related to the pre-application through the Helping Illinois Families website. Just wanted to make it clear here that all agencies should access the smart sheet that has these pre-applications, and they should access them weekly and add the pre-applicants for weatherization services to their waiting list and notify the pre-applicants of their status.
Yeah, and some people are like, we've already got tons of people on our waiting list, and that's true, but these folks that are applying through the website, it can't just be a black hole. They have to be put on the waiting list. And I think in the near future, with all the talks of potential stimulus, I think those waiting lists are going to be pretty important in the future. So we need to continue to build the waiting list.
Rental properties, also just want to make things clear here that LAAs must accept applications for weatherization from clients that live in rental property. Refusing to consider rental properties for weatherization is not an option. We've heard from a few agencies over the last year that they don't do rental properties. I don't remember that really being an option.
No, it's not. We can't discriminate against people because they don't own their own home. There's a significant number of low-income people in Illinois that rent, and so we want to be able to extend the weatherization services to those folks.
We want to make that clear to everybody, and also that LAA should also create prevailing wage catalogs for each of their contractors. So they're ready to do rental properties. And then the Illinois Department of Labor, they've also now created an online portal for completing certified payroll forms. So here we have the link where you can find do the online payroll forms. And then we suggest that you print out the prevailing wage form or do a screenshot or whatever from the portal to include that in the client file. And then we've included some important other links here. Here's the Prevailing Wage Act information at this link, and current prevailing wage rates here on this link.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that local agencies are required to monitor contractor compliance. Of course, when we come out and monitor, we'll pull a sample and take a look at that as well, but it's up to the local agency to make sure that the contractors are doing what they're supposed to with respect to prevailing wage.
Okay, section 7, program requirements, training for contractors and crews. We've added some language here, just stating that contractors need to get these various trainings completed. One thing here is when agencies are procuring new contractors do not have to complete the training prior to doing work for an agency, but they must complete the training at the next possible scheduled training.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about training a little bit later too, but there's also for brand new contractors, I think it would be worth their while to schedule a dense pack and air sealing workshop, which is which is above and beyond this, but it basically folks from the training center and from our office come to the contractor and do training on insulating and air sealing. So.
And then some exciting news regarding expense for contractors going to these trainings. We've now are going to allow the use of HHS TNTA funds for contractors who attend training at the request of the local agency to provide them a stipend to cover their cost of their labor time and their travel costs as part of the training expense. This is something that we haven't been able to do for how many years?
Yeah, during ERA, we were able to do this, and then at some point, DOE told us this is not allowable. That contractors should factor their training costs into the procured pricing, and I just feel like that hurts our average cost per unit. Contractors also factor the worst case scenario into the cost associated with training. So we are really excited for this. They can use the federal rates for per diem, lodging, mileage, and have up to $300 per day for each person attending training. So
I think the contractors would prefer this approach than trying to include that in their bid prices.
yeah,
anyway.
it's a lot less abstract than trying to put it into the bid pricing. Again, Wayne, to point out, no DOE TNTA dollars can be used. We tried this year, but we got shot down again. So
put it in our state plan. They loved the idea, and then they told us no.
Yeah.
So we're HHS TNTA only.
Wayne's not bitter about that.
Speaking of things that was in our state plan and DOE loved and rejected, another idea we have, and we're excited about this one too, is reimbursing weatherization staff for trade school or community college tuition. So again, we're going to do it with HHS TNTA funds only. Allow LAAs to reimburse new or existing weatherization employees for tuition costs incurred at technical or trade schools or community college in a field related to weatherization, energy efficiency, building science, and so on. Again, we make it clear DOE funds cannot be used for this purpose. So the way we kind of laid it out, a new employee who has completed a trade school or junior college may receive up to $5,000 reimbursement for the education cost at the 1-year anniversary of their employment at the local agency. They can get an additional $5,000 at the 2nd year and the 3rd year. So for a total of $15,000 of tuition reimbursement is possible if the employee stays with the agency for 3 years. The amount of the reimbursement cannot exceed the actual total cost of tuition that the employee incurred. Current employees will also be eligible for tuition reimbursement for classes that they take while under employment at trade schools or junior college, and they face the same, $5,000 per year limit, 15 over 3 years.
Yeah, the last paragraph there says that we've got to provide documentation. Obviously, we have to make this audit proof, like everything we do in weatherization, but we've got a couple of agencies right now that have a really good relationship with tech schools. They've got some quality new hires. And so we just thought this would help that model. Right here in Springfield, there's a Midwest Technical Institute, and I know MCS in Jacksonville's hired 3 or 4 people from Midwest Tech. Developing those relationships is really important. We'll talk about it a little bit later too in a different presentation, but we've even got Midwest Tech now. They're teaching ASHRAE 62.2. They're incorporating the blower door into their furnace contractor training. So this is just from a couple conversations with these folks and hiring a few of their students where they're making these kind of my view, positive changes to their curriculum. So it's exciting, and I think it's something that can be done anywhere in Illinois. We've got a document we're going to share that has tech schools, community colleges, and high school vocational programs throughout the state. And so anyway, we're really excited about this one. So
I think this could be a key to also for employee retention if you provide tuition reimbursement
over that 3-year
3 years,
period.
you keep them for that long.
Yeah, that's
The next issue we addressed in the operations manual is the agencies considering crews for implementing weatherization services. So we've added some language stating that any agency that wants to develop a crew must receive approval from OCA prior to moving forward. The agency should seek approval at least 6 months in advance of the program year they want to initiate crews. And the agency must submit a business plan that includes, and we got a bullet list here of things that should be included in that business plan. Right up front, they got the reason for shifting from contractors to crews, the goals and objectives, staffing plan, recruiting plan, training plan, all kinds of plans here. So yeah, the OCA will review these business plans and then provide feedback or approval within 30 days of receipt of the plan.
Yeah, and we've had several agencies in the last 5 or 10 years attempt to go crew-based, and for whatever reason, most of them have quit and gone back to contractors. And OCA made a tremendous investment in those agencies, and before we're going to do that again, we're going to need some assurances from the agency that they've got.
They've thought it
Yeah.
enough already.
Yeah.
Have a plan.
Lots of plans.
Yeah, a lot of plans. Okay. Here we just added under the procurement monitoring. We just added some language that OCA will review the schedule of the LAA's procurement process to ensure an annual market analysis and biannual, which means every 2 years, procurement is being conducted. And we have some other language related to procurement coming up right here. So now we've added some language, making it clear OCA requires agencies to conduct a full procurement for weatherization material and labor every 2 years with a start date for new contracts no later than October 1st of that procurement year. Agreements with contractors should be limited to 1 year with a provision to extend for 1 additional year. Procurement for material and labor should be done through a competitive bid process, either competitive negotiated bid, which is probably our preferred approach, or a request for a proposal invitation for bid. If procuring only weatherization material, such as the case for like crew-based agencies, or when you're in the case of appliances where there's no labor involved, a sealed bid procurement may be implemented. Let's see, furthermore, let's see what we got here. Related to the market analysis, that we just want to clarify here what needs to be included in the annual market analysis. The market analysis for the non-procurement year does not have to be a full market analysis. It can be just a sample. We suggest a sample of, or I guess more than suggest, we require a sample of 10% of the entire list of measures, and that should be focused on your most commonly implemented and the most expensive measures.
Yeah, now I will say, if you look at 10% and you notice significant price increases, you might want to
look at some
do a deeper dive into that.
But you definitely focus on things you do a lot and the things that are expensive: furnaces, AC, water heaters, and then insulation.
Right.
All the
big. We've put out documents in the past of a sample market analysis document. We're working on one with the folks at ICA and several agencies right now. One thing that I don't know that we've made clear is if there's items on that market analysis that you never use, get them off of your market analysis. Don't waste time on items that you never use, you haven't used in 10 years. Just clear them off of your market analysis document and shorten it up a little, create a little less work. I still think, while we're talking about procurement, that a regional procurement approach is the way to go. And we're working on that in several areas of the state right now. And I hope, like mad, that we are successful and can create a model for agencies to work together in the future. And I think that's going to happen. So
Yeah, I think the regional approach is definitely a time saver for the agencies, as well as gives you a bigger pool of potentially a bigger pool of contractors.
yeah, can we have story time real quick about procurement?
Sure.
There's a big commercial contractor out of Danville that called me and was inquiring about the program. And one of the reasons they were disinterested was the thought that they'd sign a contract with a local agency and only have maybe 15, 20 jobs. I explained to the contractor that we're working on this regional procurement pilot, and that potentially that contractor could sign a contract with 3, 4, 5, 6 local agencies throughout the middle part of the state. And the guy was like, well, that's great. I just don't want to have to lay off a crew or not, or find work for them. And when we don't have a weatherization job, but if we could, you know, if there'd be a guarantee that we could get 100 jobs a year, we'd be interested. Well, apparently the contractor's already signed a contract with East Central, and they're anxious to do work across the whole middle part of the state. So that's something that will get the larger contractors involved, is having the prospect for more projects. So anyway, it's exciting. I'm glad we're bringing in folks like that into the fold. So story's over. Moving on.
Good story.
Yeah.
All right. Section 9 is on final and in progress inspections. I think, yeah, we added some language here on related to change orders. Most of this language here is similar language as we have in an exhibit in the back part of this section. And this was never in the main part of this section. We thought we should include it and kind of build on it. So a change order is only required when there is a substantial change from the work order. Minor changes can be simply noted on the work order. Let's see what else we want to say about this. Then we go down here. Yes, then we added this language, adding substantial cost to a retrofit or adding a retrofit measure will require a recalculation of the SIRs prior to approving a change order request. This is necessary to ensure the current work order, SIR, and measure level SIR are in program compliance. Another thing we wanted to mention too is that if an agency's, if they're doing thorough assessments, this should not result in a substantial number of change orders. If final inspectors are noting that there's a lot of change orders in their area, then maybe the agency needs to reevaluate their assessment process to try to reduce that.
Yeah, and we just want you to act like a prudent person. Adding $100 to a furnace install, or $150. So we forgot a condensate pump, and the guy's already got the old furnace torn out, starting to put in a new one. Things like that, I don't consider a substantial change, and we need to, approve that change order and move on. Adding $1,000 to the cost of that furnace, well, that's a little bit different. What would a prudent person do? And so we think that's when, before you approve that $1,000 change, you should probably run a SIR recalc and make sure that it's still above 1. Of course, adding any retrofit to the job, whether it's a light bulb or whatever, we need to do a recalc.
If you have any question in terms of, whether you should do a recalc or not, you probably should just contact your weatherization tech and talk about your situation. And then I think we had that was under mechanical. This is under ARC. It's the same language, so we don't need to go through
You want to talk about it again?
No. Now we're to section 11, the multifamily project procedures. So this section's on multifamily for buildings of 5 units or greater. So we've reorganized, clarified, simplified this whole section on the larger multifamily. Just the previous version seems it was a bit clunky and not a little confusing. And so we and I'm not going to go through all the changes because there's quite a few changes in terms of how it's organized. I'll just mention that we've kind of simplified it to a 3-stage approval process. Project eligibility approval, get all this information together, send it to OCA, and we'll review it and then approve you to go on to the next stage, which is doing the assessment, energy model, and scope, and developing a scope of work. There's an approval process for that. You send us all the information related to this work, the assessment, the model, and the scope. OCA will review that, and if once that's approved, the agency can move on to completing the work. And then upon project completion, the agency will need to submit, all the final inspection documents, finalize the cost and weather works, provide us the calculated SIRs, the final ones, if there was any changes, and send them to us to review. And then we'll enter the SIRs into WeatherWorks. We're the only ones that can edit the SIRs that way. And then we'll also review the budgets again to make sure that within the budget limits for each of the funding sources based on the number of eligible units.
We didn't set out to make multifamily super confusing. Unfortunately, DOE got involved. During ERA, we were using WeatherWorks, as some may recall, to model multifamily buildings, even though it didn't have DOE approval as a multifamily modeling software. And so, unfortunately, DOE inserted themselves significantly into our multifamily process, and these are the results. I do want to encourage people to, just get your feet wet in multifamily. Try a 5-unit building. Start small. But I think that once you get through some of the growing pains for doing multifamily, it can definitely be more efficient, and you're better serving the community. So anyway.
And hopefully this simplified approach we lay out here will make it easier for you to understand what's involved in getting approved.
The manual hadn't been updated for years. We did incorporate it into the ops manual last year, but we didn't do a lot of editing, and Bill Dye was the last one to touch most of the policy in there, and he's not with the office anymore, so it took quite a lot of effort on Wayne's part this year to reorganize.
Another thing we wanted to mention related to multifamily, and that's the eligibility requirements based on the unit size of the building. DOE called us out on this in our state plan. The eligibility requires 66% at least for each, based on each number of units. So like before, I think we used to have eligible, it was 5-unit buildings were eligible with 3, and for an 8-unit building you had to have 5, I think, before, but that was under 66%. Though we had it this way, we'd had it that way for years, I think, but DOE finally caught it, so we made those changes to make them happy. I think we'll
fast forward here.
Forward through all the changes we made to the multifamily section. Give us a minute here. This takes a while.
One of those fancy table of contents for this document.
This program reporting section. We just made some updates here. Just that I think previously we had something remote desktop instructions, which don't even use anymore. So this has been in the manual for a few years. Probably should have been changed a few years ago, but we just updated this to include the directions for installing VPN client and all the steps you have to take, copying the WeatherWorks icon to your desktop and then how to log in and using once you get your password and user ID. So yeah, we just provide the general directions here.
Something of note, Wayne, is that username.
Oh yes.
We've got a different VPN for each local agency. So contact Wayne or myself if you're trying to install this. We'll give you the number that needs to be behind public user there and the username, and that'll take you to your agency's VPN.
I had something in here about the unit print. I always forget where I put it. There's a link somewhere in here on unit print if you need to install that.
We just saw it earlier. I trust you, Wayne.
Okay. It's in here, believe me. It's down here. Okay. If you need to install unit print software, you go to this link, you download this version, and there is no cost. The fiscal procedures section. I don't think we changed too much here. Let's see. We added one sentence here. Agencies should maintain records for equipment tracking, utilizing the longest time period of the following two options: the life of the equipment or a minimum of 10 years. This tracking method includes purchases, transfers, and dispositions. And then we also this year added the IWAP budget definitions to our exhibits at the end of this section. This is something Ben sends out every year, but we thought it'd be helpful just to have it included in the manual. And I believe that's all we have for updates to the manual. So if you have any questions once you listen to this webinar and look over the manual, please bring your questions to our Q&A session next week.